Sega seems to be on a roll with the Yakuza series as of late. This year, Western fans have been graced with Yakuza 6 A Song of Life, the series debut onto PC with Yakuza 0, and the Yakuza Fist of the North Star crossover localization announcement. Now today we take a look at the second entry in the Kiwami remakes of Yakuza games, Yakuza Kiwami 2. Just like Yakuza Kiwami, Kiwami 2 is a ground-up remake of the original PS2 classic Yakuza 2, this time made in the Dragon engine. So how does this remake hold up to the original Yakuza 2, and does the game paint an interesting light for the future of the Yakuza series? Yakuza Kiwami 2's story follows Yakuza 2's nearly beat for beat. It's been a year since the 10 billion yen incident, and Kazuma Kiryu is trying his best to move on with civilian life to raise his adoptive daughter Haruka. This all changes when Kiryu is caught up in a massive conflict between the Tojo clan and the Omni Alliance's Go Ryu clan. From here, Kiryu must take on the Go Ryu clan's Goto Ryuji, who wants nothing but bloodshed between the two clans, and also wants the best Kazuma Kiryu for good. I may have said this a lot about the Yakuza games in the past, but the stories all play out like an amazing crime drama, and Yakuza Kiwami 2's is no different. Kiwami 2's story is just a roller coaster of action, love, and betrayal from start to finish. As a follow-up to the original Yakuza, this game's story honestly takes everything and cranks it up to an 11. The writing and character development in this game is some of the best in the series, and just made me fall in love with every major and minor character on screen. This game will give you plenty of villains that you will love to hate as you go through it, and will keep you on the edge of your seat as other characters get developed. Yakuza Kiwami 2's combat is based upon the combat changes made in Yakuza 6. All of this said, the combat system has been much more fleshed out in comparison. You have many more skills and unlockable combos that you can perform in this game that puts the combat system back on par with earlier Yakuza games. The combat system is not only improved, but it feels just as impactful as before. You will always feel the power behind each and every one of your moves, making you go on a real power trip. What I am the most appreciative for Yakuza Kiwami 2 is the revitalized heat system. While in Yakuza 6, most of your combat relied on performing extreme heat moves instead of traditional moves, Kiwami 2 opts to have the best of both worlds. Kiwami 2 not only has a plethora of normal heat moves that you can perform, you can also befriend the people around Kamurocho and Sotenbori to perform some really over-the-top team heat moves as well. Not only that, but extreme heat is also returned in this game too, this time as an unlockable function, so it can be pretty easy to miss it if you're not too careful. Extreme heat more or less acts like the same as it did in 6, but you don't have as much super armor in comparison. Don't try to use it as a giant win button like in 6. While yes, you can't die while in this mode, enemies will still have no problem knocking you over if you use it too recklessly. Yakuza Kiwami 2 has a lot of quality of life improvements over Yakuza 6. The first example of this would have to be with the enemy's health. No longer does every random enemy's health appear as one giant bar on the bottom of the screen as well as over their heads. The new enemy health feature opens up more space and makes it easier with keeping track of the boss's HP. Speaking of bosses, multiple health bars now return for bosses. Instead of having bosses with one giant health bar and high defense to compensate, bosses will now have the series standard of multiple health bars with different colors. I honestly prefer this method, as with the one health bar method it caused a lot of bosses to be easily cheesed in 6 with extreme heat, or it can make you feel like your attacks have little to no effect on the enemies. Overall, the combat system of Yakuza Kiwami 2 is much more in-depth than Yakuza 6. It honestly feels much more rewarding, as I have to plan out my attacks more carefully and not always mash away through everything. If the combat system is more refined now, I am honestly excited to see how the combat system will continue to evolve in future entries of the series. What's a Yakuza game without a lot of side content? Well, a boring time, that's what. Yakuza Kiwami 2 again picks up from the shortcomings of Yakuza 6 by adding in much more side content for you to do. Returning from Yakuza 6, you have yourself the Clan Creator minigame, and returning from Yakuza 0, you have the Cabaret Club Management minigame, both of them having their own detailed story for you to follow alongside of the main one. With this, the series continues the trend of surprising me with how well and detailed and deep some of these subplots can go. There is also the return of the underground fighting arena in Purgatory, and much more side content for you to indulge yourself into. The best part about Yakuza sometimes is just all the little things you can do with the side content, and Yakuza Kiwami 2 is no different. You can go around town playing darts, indulging in some underground gambling, or try yourself out with some shogi, or spend some time doing things that the YouTube censors would demonetize this video for if I showed it on screen. Oh, did I mention that this game also has competitive pissing? Yeah, once you've filled up at your local bar, head over to the nearest toilet at a Sega arcade to have a literal pissing match. Once you're done there, go indulge at the local arcade and relive some of Sega's glory days. The amount of things you can do in Kamurocho and Sotenbori can feel endless. With Yakuza Kiwami 2 being a remake of the original Yakuza 2, it's only natural to have all the sub-stories remade as well. The sub-stories in Kiwami 2 are honestly really well crafted and have aged incredibly well. The sub-stories in this series in general normally feel unique to each other, but more so in this entry. After completing about half of these sub-stories, none of them really blended together or felt repetitive to do. There were many times where I found myself running around Kamurocho and Sotenbori, trying to find as many sub-stories to complete as humanly possible. One of the biggest new additions to Yakuza Kiwami 2 was the inclusion of everyone's favorite mad dog, Goro Majima, getting his own side campaign. The events of his campaign take place between the events right after Yakuza and a half year before Yakuza 2. While the campaign is on the short side, you were able to play around Sotenbori as Majima with his unique mad dog fighting style. While his upgrades are limited, it was still a blast just mowing down waves of enemies with a single knife. You unlock more chapters for Majima the further you go through the main story, so it can be a good tool to use if you want to take a break from the main story to see something else. I think the only real downside about this whole campaign is just how short it is, but I guess they really didn't want Majima stealing the whole show. That said, this entire story is nothing but pure Majima madness, and everyone who's a fan of Majima and has played Yakuza 0 will end up loving the story even more. Yakuza Kiwami 2 is the second game from Sega to use their high-fidelity graphics engine, the Dragon engine, and it really does show. A common issue I ran into Yakuza 6 was the frame rate. While I used the PS4 Pro, I would still see noticeable slowdown while exploring Kamurocho, or when the physics engine is in full effect. I would hate to imagine how bad it would have been on the base PS4. Now with Kiwami 2, I find myself not running into this issue as nearly as much, or at all, really. The game manages to keep a much more consistent 30 FPS no matter what is happening on screen. Kamurocho and Sotenbori are much more condensed with people compared to Kamurocho and 6 and Onomichi. With the amount of added people on screen, Kamurocho and Sotenbori really feel like being in the busy streets of Tokyo or Osaka. The visuals of Kamurocho and Sotenbori look better than ever in this remastered version. I really thought that Yakuza 6 looked good, but Kiwami 2 has managed to take the cake in the visuals department. Both cities are extremely vibrant at night, and I always found myself taking my time to go from destination to destination to take in all of the sights of both cities. I am just amazed as to how much they were able to improve with the game visually. I can only feel like the performance will continue to improve with every new Yakuza game from here on out. It should also be noted that unlike Yakuza 6, Yakuza Kiwami 2 is not a fully voiced game, and returns to the series standard of only having voice acting in pre-rendered scenes or important in-game scenes. That said, it wasn't that much of a turnoff. The actual in-game cinematics and action scenes were so well done that it made up for the fact that small conversations were not fully voiced. While it would have been cool, it did the job really well. I would often find myself on the edge of my seat with the performance that was going on in front of me. What helped the most would often be the ambient music that plays in the background that helps set the scene. The unofficial soundtrack of this game is seriously bone-chilling at times, and the music can really help drive everything home. Now we have to address something about Yakuza Kiwami 2. How does it hold up to the original Yakuza 2, and is it as good of a remake as Kiwami? Well, the answer to that question is, in most regards, yes. However, it does find fault in some areas. Yakuza Kiwami 2 does an amazing job of sticking true to the original story and reshoots almost every scene perfectly. While everything looks brand new, they manage to keep everything the same and not deviate too much from the original plot. There are also some pretty good remixes of tracks from the original Yakuza 2, with my personal favorites being Outlaw Lullaby and Roar of Twin Dragons. Some of these tracks I could listen to all day long, but the problem is, a lot of the music from the original Yakuza 2 did not make it over into Yakuza Kiwami 2. Instead of custom boss themes for a lot of non-major bosses, they just reused some of the same tracks over and over again. This would get rather underwhelming at times. There were also tracks that were replaced with new ones too. While some of them were good replacements and helped better fit the mood, there were quite a few of them that fell flat. All of that said, none of these changes were completely bad changes, just a bit disappointing compared to other entries in the series. The last major difference between Kiwami 2 and the original Yakuza 2 would have to be the removal of a story area in Sotenbori. For its time, this area was insanely detailed on the PS2 version of the game, so honestly to see this area in the Dragon engine would have been a massive treat for fans. Sadly, that area of the game was removed and the story element was moved into the main area of Sotenbori. It kind of feels jarring when you get to it, but honestly, if you are not aware of the original area, it may not bother you too much, or at all, really. Thankfully though, Yakuza Kiwami 2 definitely gives more to the players than takes away. With the inclusion of redone scenes, improved combat, and a plethora of side content, and an entire new separate campaign, I can definitely live with a lot of the changes that were made from the original Yakuza 2. This game still holds true to the original integrity, and honestly made it more enjoyable to play through and watch. Yakuza Kiwami 2 has easily become one of my favorite games in the entire Yakuza series. From the action-packed story to the overabundance of side content provided, to the ability to play as Majima again, I honestly have a game that keeps me wanting to come back for more and more, and never want to put the controller down. For fans coming into the series off the backs of Yakuza 0 and Yakuza Kiwami, going right into Yakuza Kiwami 2 is definitely your best bet. All of that said, if you can, try and play the original Yakuza 2 sometime as well. While I love Yakuza Kiwami 2 and see it as a de facto way for newer players to enjoy the installment, you should really go and see what the game was like when it originally came out, and see what the game managed to get away with being a PS2 title. My time with Yakuza Kiwami 2 was far from done, and this will definitely be a game we'll be trying to platinum. And that does it for our review of Yakuza Kiwami 2. To see the written review, be sure to check out our website, GamingGamma.com. A link to the review will be provided down in the description bar below. Also, if you have any comments or questions about Yakuza Kiwami 2 or our review, by all means leave them down in the comments section. I would love to hear from you. Also, let me know if you guys are also picking up Yakuza Kiwami 2 when it launches on August 28th. And before we head off, I'd like to give a special thanks to all my patrons on Patreon for making today's review possible. And if you're new to my channel, just find me out for the first time through this review, hey, be sure to subscribe for future reviews, commentaries, let's plays, and more. And as always everyone, thanks for watching.